of From the Point Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Modesto, joined by my friends Alex Bucola, Sean Salehi, and Tristan Schofield. Alex, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing all right. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm hanging in there, man. Excited to talk some hockey.
Glad to hear that. Tristan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
I'm glad to hear that too. Now, we are kind of behind when it comes to the hockey world, considering that the Stanley Cup is now over with. It was quite the interesting season, considering the whole pandemic virus taking over and both the West and East going into their own sort of bubbles. But the Lightning ended up getting the Stanley Cup this year. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Alex, why don't you start?
Well, yeah, I just want to start off by saying let's give the NHL some credit because if we look back right now in all the sports that are back to starting up, the NHL right now is the #1 professional sports league to have 0 positive tests of COVID. So their protocols worked really well, and we got to give some credit to what they did in the bubble. So that was pretty cool to see. But yeah, I mean, what a Stanley Cup final. It was so entertaining to see the firepower of both teams. I mean, the Stars coming out of the West out of nowhere with all that firepower. I mean, Kiviranta, did you guys even hear about that guy before the finals?
No, I don't. I never heard of this man.
I mean,
Ever.
Kiviranta, he was amazing in the finals. It was so fun to watch. And then that young defense of the Stars, I mean, obviously they couldn't hang in there with the Lightning. But, I mean, the firepower that the Stars have just couldn't compete with the Lightning.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Sean and Tristan, I know you guys are both Caps fans, and the Caps were in that kind of round robin play to begin with, and they had to play the Lightning twice. How did you guys think? One, how did the Caps do in the playoffs? And two, what do you guys think of the Lightning winning the Cup? Why don't you start, Sean?
Well, I think the Lightning, first of all, were approaching kind of a Capitals level of consistent, dominance during the regular season, and then just starting to really tail off when it came to the playoffs. And obviously they got farther than the Capitals did on a consistent basis. They weren't getting bounced in the second round every year. But if they had lost this year, it was going to, they were going to get into that conversation of, does this team just choke? And clearly they were able to put all of those thoughts and, ideas from pundits to bed, and were able to finally get the job done. It was good to see Steven Stamkos and company finally win the Cup. That team is absolutely loaded. They're going to be loaded for a while now. I would not be shocked to see them right back up there towards the top of the NHL come in 2021. As for the Washington Capitals, I mean, it was a really disappointing season, end of the season rather. You really don't expect this team, a team that has the level of talent that the Caps have, to go into any postseason, regardless of what kind of format it's in, whether it be round robin or, elimination style right off the bat, or even just a normal year, to them to get bounced in the first round. They got bounced in the first round each of the first 2 seasons, or each of the last 2 years, I should say. And to be completely honest, it's pretty unacceptable in terms of the standards that have been set in place for the last couple years of the franchise, and they decided to move on from their head coach Todd Reirden and go in a different direction with Peter Laviolette. And I think if they want to try to give Ovi one more cup run before he inevitably retires, because all players do, they're going to have to put in a little bit of a better system and have a better culture change. That way they can get back to where they were in 2018.
Tristan, what do you think of the Lightning winning the Stanley Cup?
Sean just took the words right out of my mouth. It was awesome to see the Lightning finally win after being such a powerhouse for so long. I mean, we're talking about going back to 2013, 2014, where they were making the finals and just couldn't keep up. And they finally got what they deserved. And it was awesome to see Stamkos winning the Cup, lifting that over his head, even though he only played 3 minutes of one period in the entire playoffs. He scored his goal. He earned his name on that cup, especially after what he's had to go through, and especially after that Canadian Olympic team snub back in 2010. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he scored.
He got it. I think it's 10.
He scored over 60
goals.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that too.
60 goals that year. Didn't make the team, and now he's got the greatest hockey honor of all. So
that was when it was in Vancouver too.
Yeah. I'll tell you this: watching the Lightning win the Cup is kind of difficult for me as a Rangers fan because for
I mean,
one
they have
reason.
all your old players.
Well, yeah, kind of. So in that trade that the Lightning and Rangers made for where the Rangers sent JT Miller and Ryan McDonough over to the Lightning, part of those trades there were conditions where if any of the next 2 years that if the Lightning could win the cup any of the next 2 years, I know I butchered that like word wise, but after the trade, for the next 2 years, the Lightning win the cup, those picks would turn into firsts, and they didn't win the cup until after those trades expired and the conditions didn't matter anymore. So the Rangers lost out on yet another first round pick, and they were stuck with just like a third and a second. And it's kind of annoying watching like your ex-captain. Except we have the first. Yes, we have. Yes, I understand we have the first pick. Yes, I understand we have the first pick. It's just I don't know, annoying to watch it. How you're like 1 year short. Because I mean, it's clearly not Jeff Gorton's fault. Jeff Gorton did what he had to do, and he's done fantastic things for the Rangers franchise since. It's just like, oh my god, our ex-captain is winning a cup on another team where he's not a captain. Like it's pain. It's pain. And I mean, New York people know pain just from their own sports teams. But it's just, but anyway, I digress. Moving on, since
You got to be a little happy to see McDonough get a cup, though.
Yes, I am, but it's still. I'd rather have him get a cup in New York.
Well, you want to talk about frustration? How about? I mean, Tristan will be able to speak to this. How about the fact that Kevin Shattenkirk actually did something in the playoffs?
Yes,
fan,
no,
that was incredibly frustrating to watch.
You're telling me we signed this man for like 4 years. He played 1 year with us, or 2 years. We bought him out because the dude couldn't skate. And then, I mean, I guess when you put him on a line with like Victor Hedman and, Nikita Kucherov and Stevens, competent hockey players, like, I guess then they will produce, yes. But still, it's like, I'm not going to say half that team is Rangers because that's just flat out wrong. But there's a bunch of prominent ex-Ranger, former Rangers on that team that won cups without not on the Rangers, and it's just anyway, moving on. There's a lot of other news in the NHL since, like, there've been a couple of trades. There's been a few trades. I know the Blackhawks made two trades, and Alex, you're a Blackhawks fan, and I know
Dylan Sikora going over to Vegas for Brandon Peary. I mean, it's the epitome of a Blackhawks trade. We have Brandon Peary. We're going to draft Brandon Peary. This kid's going to be good. Give him 2 years in the show. Turns out to be nothing. We're going to give up on him. They get rid of him. And a couple years down the road, you know what? We're going to try to get him back. But, I mean, who knows? I mean, Brandon Peary, as Tommy, we and you were talking about this earlier in the week. I mean, who knows? Brandon Peary could slot into that third, fourth line, put up at least, if he puts up 20, 30 points on that third, fourth line,
if he has 30 points, then that
is
way more you're expecting.
I know, but the thing is with Brandon Peary, he does have the potential to be a 30-goal scorer, 20-goal scorer. Ooh. He does have that potential. He's when he's in the AHL, he absolutely dominates, and I know it's the AHL, totally different play style, but still, he has the potential to dominate. But what I've heard the news of that trade is that the front office of the Blackhawks, it was more of a trade for Dylan Sikora. They see this kid as relatively young, still has decent potential, so they're going to try to get him a new change of scenery because, I mean, to put it bluntly, he really hasn't done anything on the Hawks. So they're going to try to get him a change of scenery, see if he can help out Vegas. I don't know what's going to happen with him. He is on the smaller side. I think only 5'9". I think
he's like 5'9", 5'10", something.
Yeah,
like that.
We'll see what he can do. I was a big fan of him.
Hey, we don't call that small. That's
it's small if you play professional sports.
I was a big fan of him coming out of Northwestern. So, I mean, we'll see what he could do at Vegas. And then the trade happening today, earlier this morning, Olli Mata going to yet another Pacific Division team, going to the Kings for Brad Morrison, 23-year-old prospect, I guess you could call him, really hasn't solidified his name, I would say, even to be an AHLer at this point. His top season's been 20 points in 60 games. So at this point, that trade is nothing but opening cap space for maybe a bigger contract to get a Crawford back, or even opening up money to give Dominic Kubalik a big contract because they need to sign Kubalik to a big contract, regardless of what anybody will say. The Hawks still have firepower on offense. They need to sign Kubalik and not let what happened with Panarin happen.
Well, this is two straight defensemen, or no, not two straight defensemen.
No.
But getting rid of Ali Mata opens up a path
I want to say roughly $4 million.
They retained $750,000 of his salary out of his like $3 or $4 million salary. So I mean they cleared up a decent amount of cap space, and this opens up a clear pathway for the guy they drafted to take over Duncan Keith's role, Adam Buckfist, and then the other guy, Bodine. And I haven't really been able to follow the Blackhawks minor leagues or anybody in their system, but I know Boqvist is going or supposed to be that guy for them.
Yeah.
And like he's supposed to be the one that's taken the reins over from Duncan Keith. And I mean they have a ridiculous amount of money tied up in Duncan Keith and Taves and Kane.
That's an understatement. Yes,
so,
they do.
Yeah, so they have to find money wherever they can. And I think getting rid of Ali Mata was, I mean, not bad because I mean Kubalik's gonna want like I don't know, probably like 6-7 million. No, not gonna say 7. He's probably 6.
He's gonna want
multiple years. I'd say like 6 million. And he's a guy that if you're the Lightning, you really got to try and keep him because I mean Kane and Taves, it's not like they're growing anymore. Like they're gonna get old fast. And so, as we've seen, the Hawks have a fantastic record of having great young guys come up with them and then just vamoosing.
And kind of piggybacking off of your Hawks defensive prospects, the whole thing is with the front office with the Hawks. Are you going to stick by Adam Boqvist and are you going to play him? There was a couple mystery healthy scratches during the season of, we're just going to healthy scratch Boqvist, Nobody really understands why you would healthy scratch him. Every time he plays, he plays like a Duncan Keith. He's not really going to give you all those goals. He's not going to give you the points. He's going to get a good stick on the puck, and he's going to try to drive forwards wide and try to get them out of the play. He has a great stick in the defensive zone. So these scratches, especially when it was in the playoffs, when you're scratching Boqvist, you gotta kind of ask why. Why would they scratch this kid who's 20 years old and has the potential to be the future defenseman of the Hawks? So, and as for Nicholas Bodine, I think his ceiling is insane. This kid is an offensive defenseman, and I think he's going to be really good to put the puck in the net. I mean, who knows? We could have a new Seabrook Keith kind of tandem coming up. I mean, who knows?
Would definitely be like the best case scenario for these guys.
Absolutely.
Like, absolutely. But I mean, the Hawks definitely have a ton of work to do via cap and then making sure their defense, because their defense is kind of like the Rangers, where it's just like it's okay. They have glimpses where they're okay, but it's mostly not that good.
We don't have the defense does not have an identity yet.
Yeah,
and
same.
As soon as the Hawks find that identity, I think then they're going to be pretty solid. But it's all about those young guys right now. Are they going to progress?
Yeah, no, the Rangers are just now starting to find their identity. Speaking of which, the Rangers bought out the King, Henrik Lundqvist, out of his, I think, 2 more years that he had left on his deal. As a Rangers fan, it hurts. It feels like you're like someone from your family almost died. Like he died.
I see.
Well, Sean, imagine how you would feel if Obi, if his contract was bought out.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, like it's a guy that's
I would
been
say
around.
break up, not die.
No, I'm gonna tell you, I almost cried when I heard that news, and I'm gonna tell you, I did. Like I'm gonna tell you right now, I almost did, because I mean he's a guy who played for the team for 15 years. He was a 7th round pick. I mean, you are just grasping at straws after like I don't know the 3rd round really or the 4th round really, and so his brother was taken up before him in the 3rd round, and look how I think he played like 50 games in the NHL or something like that. But I mean dude, he's the all-time leading goaltender for wins with the franchise. Like it's a shame that he did not win the cup. All I want right now for him is to just have his name on a Stanley Cup with some team somewhere because he deserves it. I mean, there's a lot of names out there, and I know the Caps are one of them. Tristan, how do you think Lundqvist would fit into kind of that game plan with the Caps?
You know, I don't know. That's one thing that I'd be really excited to see. And it's also just going to be really weird because, the Caps Rangers rivalry kind of goes pretty deep. And especially, the Caps losing out that 3-1 lead a few years back, 2015?
I remember that.
He was the goalie for that. That's, so there's gonna be some hurt feelings that we have to move on from. But if that is the thing that does happen, having Lundqvist and Ovi on the same Stanley Cup winning team, that would be pretty damn cool.
Sean?
So in terms of how do I think this would fit, like a damn glove. Like if I'm being serious, and this isn't just because I really like Henrik Lundqvist. I think he's been one of the faces of the NHL for a long time. Him and Carey Price have been, the two goalies that have been the face of the league for the last 10 years. I mean, you can throw up Braden Holtby, you can throw up Tuukka Rask, obviously, maybe even Jonathan Quick during those 2 cup runs with the Kings. But Henrik Lundqvist has been the guy, obviously, in New York. But he's in the back end of his career, obviously. He's not getting any younger. But this is a perfect opportunity for him to join a team that has still title aspirations in the very near future, and he can do it for cheap. Because we have to remember, the big thing that makes this move so logical for the Capitals is the fact that they're going to have to move on from Braden Holtby. Holtby is due a lot of money. He's probably going to become one of, if not the highest paid goalie in the NHL during this offseason for another team. The Capitals are one of the most cap-strapped teams in the National Hockey League. In fact, they actually, in terms of goalies, they just have just under $1 million in cap space for that position, which is 29th in the NHL. So it's going to end up becoming a real squeeze for them to try to re-sign Holtby and then re-sign some of these other pieces that they want to keep around, like Brendan Dillon on the defensive end, and then other stars down the line like Jacob Vrana and other young forwards that they have at their disposal. When you look at Henrik Lundqvist, he's a perfect guy that can start just over 20 games a season as a backup guy, maybe even a 1A, 1B that you can use with their young prospect, the Russian Ilya Samsonov, and they really like what they see out of Samsonov. They took him in the first round several years ago. They think that he can end up being that guy that Holtby ended up turning into, and I think this would be a perfect opportunity for Lundqvist to get on a team again that could take him back to the Stanley Cup and maybe even give him a chance to lift it. And then not to mention, if we even want to get into the personal route, we mentioned the rivalry of the Caps and the Rangers. Well, if you're Henrik Lundqvist, I'm sure it's hard for you to try to tell your family to pick up everything and move after 15 years of your life staying in one place. So honestly, moving 5 hours south down 995 isn't that much of a change, even if it's just for Lundqvist himself. His family can stay in New York. He can maybe go back and forth. Obviously, it's hard during an NHL season. There's not a lot of downtime, but it just provides much more of a perhaps more convenient opportunity for him rather than go somewhere else on the Western Conference or even in Canada somewhere in the Eastern Conference. So I think that if you look at all the teams that really could use a goalie and really could use him to the full extent that I think he wants to be used, because he still wants to play, obviously. He has a sense of pride. But I think you have to look at the Capitals as being the number one team on that list.
Do you think, though, there's a bit of a logjam, though? Because now they got Holtby, Samsonov, and if they sign
Holtby's
Lundqvist,
out the door. Holtby's
contract's up, I thought.
Holtby's out the door.
Okay,
No,
okay. But what I'm saying is,
suggesting.
So you're saying that if they don't sign Holtby, they're going to
I'm
sign
telling you
Lundqvist.
now they will not re-sign Holtby.
Okay. So
because the thing is that Braden Holtby is going to have to take either a 1-year deal or a significant hometown discount in order to come back to Washington. Because you have to realize that he was already losing starting time to Samsonov this past season. Samsonov is definitely the heir to the throne. I mean, if we want to keep using King references with Lundqvist, he's going to end up being the guy. It makes no sense for Holtby financially to come back here because he's not going to get as much money here as he could get from Edmonton, or he could get from one of these Calgary, or even, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, the Islanders or these other teams that can use a goalie and have the space to pay him for it. When you look at, not to mention then, and that's just the financial side, when you then look at the career side of him, it doesn't make any sense for him to sign a long-term deal with the franchise just to stay with the Capitals but not end up being the starting guy. So I think Holtby's out the door. It pains me because Holtby has become, obviously he wasn't here 15 years, but he has become like a Lundqvist to the Caps. He led them to their first Stanley Cup win in franchise history. He has most of the franchise records over Ole Kolzig, who is a big name in this town, in Washington, D.C. hockey history, and just NHL history in terms of goalies in the late 90s and early 2000s. But he also was, one of the top goaltenders in the National Hockey League over the past 10 years, and it's going to really hurt to see him go. I'm happy to I hope that he goes somewhere that he can end up winning another cup and have success. I just hope it's outside of the Eastern Conference. But yeah, I think because of that, that's why it would make the most sense for the Capitals. Obviously, if Holtby stays, there's no way they go for after Lundqvist. But Holtby, I believe, is halfway out the door, and that will open the door for Lundqvist to come in and get a couple more shots, maybe just one, with another team that can contend for a title next year.
I would hope he wins one. And I mean, there's been a lot with goaltenders. Goaltenders have been in the news all over the place. Robin Lehner getting his 5-year deal, finally getting to settle down somewhere. I've seen plenty of jokes from people just ripping Chicago and Steve Bowman getting rid of Robin Lehner. Stan Bowman. Yeah, he doesn't deserve getting called by his real name.
After that trade,
but
absolutely not.
But he finally gets to stay in one place. I know he's been bouncing around tons of teams, Islanders, the Sabres, now the Golden Knights, and then Chicago. But does that beg the question now? That kind of puts the Golden Knights in a bit of a weird cap place, because I believe they're paying Lehner like $7 million. I think
they have 12,
around that.
They have $12 million locked up in Fleury and
that's
Lehner
that's a lot of money for just goaltenders. I know Fleury's got
5 for 5. Yeah.
They have 7 invested in Fleury. So does that beg the question that Fleury could be on the chopping block now for the Golden Knights? Like, do we think that there's a possibility that Marc-Andre Fleury could be on the move? Alex, what do
Absolutely
you think?
Not.
Yeah. No,
Absolutely
you don't think so?
Not. No way. I think that they're going to run this 1-2 tandem, or as Sean put it, 1A 1B tandem. I think that when you have that and that, and with their defensemen that's coming up too, and their firepower on offense, I honestly would put them as the number 1 team to come out of the West with all that.
I gotta disagree.
Really?
Because I can't see
I agree with Tristan.
Fleury. I can't see Fleury being okay with being the number 2 spot. He's still in a pretty good year in his in his overall career, so I see him moving to be the number 1 somewhere. And honestly, I was thinking that's another potential spot for him to be is the Capitals.
Well, here's
I think that $7 million. I think that $7 million kind of plays a big part in that.
Yeah, you're right. So maybe not the
here's
Capitals, but he's definitely on the move from Vegas because he's definitely taking a number 1 spot somewhere.
Well, so here's my thing, and this is going to be a problem for Marc-Andre Fleury, is he has a modified no-trade clause. So that means that he can pick a certain number of teams that he can't be moved to. However, it also means that the Vegas Golden Knights can pick a certain number of teams that he can't be moved to. And Vegas isn't going to trade him to a conference foe that they think can potentially threaten them on their way to a Stanley Cup. So it's going to be hard for him to be able to have the leverage to move to a team that would be contending because of that modified no trade clause. Right now,
but
he has 2021 and he has 2021-2022 left on his deal. So he's got $6.5 million due this upcoming season and $6 million due next season. They could buy him out. It would cost them a pretty penny to do so. But honestly, that might be, I mean, if he demands out of the deal, then that might be their only option. But I agree with Alex. I think the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury, yes, he wants to start, but I think they want to preserve him too. I mean, goalies nowadays aren't going to be able, especially at the age of 35, like he is. You can't really run him into the Yeah, you can't run him into the ground and play him 40 games a season, or 60 games a season rather, and expect a lot to come out of the season in terms of health wise and stuff like that. So I think it would honestly be most beneficial for him to stay, and I'm sure he knows that because he wants to prove that he can win the cup outside of Pittsburgh. And I think if he can win it in Vegas, that'll help his legacy as well. And I mean, I'm sure any way that he believes he can have a good shot to do that, he's going to do it. And I think his best shot, like Alex says, is in Vegas because right now they're the favorite in the West. Like they have to be.
Easily.
Yeah,
Easily.
yeah. The Stars did their thing this year and they went on a good run. But I mean, if you're picking teams next year in terms of who's going to come out of the Western Conference, you can't vote against Vegas because that team is. I mean, they're loaded. They're loaded in all three phases of their hockey team, and
Absolutely.
I just don't see him moving on, partially because of the contract, but also just due to what he wants out of the rest of his career since he's on the back end of his years in the NHL.
The team that sticks with me, though, and I think this also plays into the Holtby case a little bit, is a team that is not in the same conference, the team that has enough cap to bring him on, just enough cap, and our contenders are the Carolina Hurricanes. I think the Canes are possibly in the running for trading for Marc-Andre Fleury. Because, I mean, don't get me wrong.
I was looking at the Canes to sign Braden Holtby.
I agree. I think the Canes are going to be one of the people to be a front runner for Braden Holtby. The problem is their cap. I think they have $73 million in cap dedicated to the team so far, which is quite an amount. But clearly they're not going to be able to win a cup with Mrazek and Reimer. Like that, if you could, I don't know how you could think you could win a cup with those two guys. You can win a cup with Holtby, and you can win a cup with Marc-Andre Fleury.
What do you see them giving up for then? Because
yes, that's a good question.
They have
they can't
the Rangers
make the cup without anybody that they have.
They would clearly have to trade away picks and prospects. So
here's my thing: is I don't think that Vegas is in a win later mode. I think Vegas is in a win now mode.
I know, and here's the thing. But here's the thing. The Canes have prospects that are NHL ready right now that can compete on that team right now. And I mean, they don't have the first pick because the Rangers have it, but they do have not the Lightning. They have the Toronto's pick, which is in the later 20s. And I mean, it is what it is. I know they probably don't care about that first round pick, but they do have a couple of defensemen, and they do have a center, Martin Necas. Not really 100% how to say his name.
Yeah, but
yes, he would be the centerpiece of that. Yes, he would. He would absolutely, because he's NHL ready right now. He can compete at that level as he's shown so far. I mean, he hasn't played a lot of NHL games, but he has produced a decent amount, and he's young. And I see him being he's going to have to be a part of that deal. He's going to have to be a part of that deal just because alone he's NHL ready, and he has star written all over him. But
the thing is, I don't see the Carolina Hurricanes giving up a top prospect as in Martin Necas. I mean, I think he's too good. I mean, you see what he did in the playoffs. He was that guy that played the second line center. So I think that they rely on him way too much to give him away. They had pretty good goaltending in Mrazek and decent in Reimer. So I think that they see Martin Necas at way more value than they see Marc-Andre Fleury.
The thing is, too, that we have to remember is the fact that they're going to go after Holtby more than they're going to go after a guy that they have to trade for.
Absolutely.
Okay, but here's the thing: they have to get rid of either Reimer or Mrazek if they trade. They're going to have to get rid of Reimer or Mrazek, which by themselves, either one of them could be decent backup goaltenders, and that dumps enough salary to comfortably fit Marc-Andre Fleury into that cap kind of struggle that they have going on in Carolina. If they sign Fleury, they are still contractually obligated to both Reimer and Mrazek, so that creates a logjam there. You're going to have to trade away either Mrazek or Reimer. Trading away singularly either one of those guys is going to be difficult because no team is really going to want just Mrazek or just Reimer. They're going to have to be part of some package. Clearly not the centerpiece, but they're going to have to be a part of some package.
Yeah. But here's the thing too. If you look at past history, what do all these teams that won the cup? What do they have? A lot of these teams, they rely on a very solid backup goalie. You look at the past Blackhawks. Who did they have as their backup? Antti Ranta, who had a great season as a backup. You look at Antti Niemi, who came up as a backup and then stole the starting position from Cristobal Huet when they won the first cup in 2010. You look at was it Grubauer, boys? That was the backup for Holtby.
He started that playoff. He started the playoffs that year because of the fact that he played so well during the regular season.
Well, that's what I'm saying. These teams rely on these backup goalies to come in when the starter is down. So when you have that 1-2 tandem in Fleury and Lehner, you have not one but two goalies that you can rely on day after day to most likely get you a win. Both of these goalies know how to win, so I think that there's no chance that they are going to trade Fleury. I think maybe they're going to listen to some offers, but I think that absolutely. But I think that what they want for Fleury is going to be way too high for any of these teams to want to give away anything. They are going to want a Martin.
Here's another thing: is that you got to look at it, that everybody saw just over Twitter. Over the past playoffs is the drama that stems from having two potentially starting goaltenders basically face off against each other, and when the team chooses one over the other, there's going to be drama for the one that's not chosen, as we saw with Marc-Andre Fleury.
And the thing that I have with Nichas, the thing I have with Nichas being a big part of that trade, and I think they might be willing to trade him away, is because their number one prospect is a center in Suzuki. Like Nick Suzuki is
for Vegas,
player for the Canadiens.
I mean, not Suzuki. God, what's his name?
Ryan Suzuki.
Yes, thank you.
His brother, yes.
Yes, not Nick. Ryan, the center. But he is NHL ready right now, I believe. I believe that's what the Canes are saying.
Absolutely.
He's NHL ready. Clearly, he's not going to get top 6 minutes like Nichas was getting. However, over the course of an entire 82-game season, you could kind of build him up to be third, second line center material. I mean, he was drafted, I think, last year or 2 years ago. But he, I think, is ready right now to play. I think he was a late first round pick, but he had an injury. I think he had an injury to his eye where he took a high stick to his eye. I think he's ready to come up, and I think he's ready to produce right now. I think they have the capabilities to trade away Marc-Andre Fleury, and I think putting Reimer or Mrazek, Nichas, and then a pick, just throw in a pick, and then kind of spice it up with something else might be enough to grab Marc-Andre Fleury, especially if they retain all $7 million of that.
That package absolutely would be plenty enough to get Fleury, and it's all based off of, does Carolina find it good enough to give away Nichas to get Fleury?
So here's the last thing.
My answer is no.
Yeah, same. I mean, I'll say this before we move on is I think you have to look at both sides of the deal and both teams involved. First of all, I think Vegas, as constructed, can win a Stanley Cup. And it helps a lot the fact that, like Alex and I are saying, they have a 1-2 punch. And, I mean, you have, like you said, like Tristan mentioned, the potential drama aspect of it. But I think these two are grown men that understand that either at the end of the day, they're both getting paid. And at the end of the day, if they both end up getting their names in the Stanley Cup, they're not going to care who really is starting every day, considering they're going to probably be at a 50-50 split. If it ends up becoming to where Leonard's the guy day in and day out, obviously it's going to end up causing some problems in the locker room, at least with Marc-Andre Fleury. But I don't see that being the case. When you look at these two teams, though, and the directions that they're heading, yes, Carolina is trying to become they've been in the playoffs the last couple of years. They're trying to become a consistent playoff force, but they're not in the same ballpark as Vegas. And I don't know if adding just Marc-Andre Fleury puts them in that ballpark And that's what you have to look at if you're a team like Carolina is, and that is this one move going to end up putting us over the hump, putting us into that next bracket of teams that is going to try to vie for a championship. I don't think that is, especially what they're going to have to give up for just this 35-year-old goaltender that's going to have 2 years left on his deal. I just don't think it's going to end up being enough for them to make that next leap. And I think Vegas, I mean, again, you don't have to worry about cap because you're under the cap, and you have a good enough team right now to where you just got to keep everybody in-house and keep everybody healthy, and you'll be fighting for a Stanley Cup championship next year. So I just don't think it makes sense for both teams at this stage, just based on where they are in terms of not only the short term but also the long term in terms of their goals.
That is a good.
And the last thing I'll say about this too is if we've seen anything from Marc-Andre Fleury in the past, is he is well more than mature enough to take over that backup position.
That is true.
We see him taking the backup position to when Matt Murray came out of the woodwork and won then the Stanley Cup. Marc-Andre Fleury interviewed a ton about getting that backup position, and he took it with nothing more than the greatest maturity, and he was just happy to get himself a cup. So I see that same position. Also, boys, we're forgetting one thing, which is Alex Nedeljkovic, 24-year-old goalie prospect in the Carolina Hurricane system. So he's come up here and there in the last couple of years, and his first start ever for the Carolina Hurricanes was a shutout. So I think that's somebody who we definitely need to take into consideration for this trade package. If they want to trade, maybe throw in Nedeljkovic, and maybe even think maybe we can rely on Nedeljkovic to take over the future between the posts for them. So
that is a good point.
The thing I have to say, if this trade is going to go through 100%, it's just going to be a Fleury for Fleury, Marc-Andre for Hayden. That's
I see. Why not? Why not? That wouldn't be.
There you go.
That wouldn't be bad. But
there's been a wilder trade.
That is very true. That is very true. But a lot of these teams are going to be looking to add their future superstar coming Tuesday on the 6th of October. Kind of a weird date for the NHL draft, considering the circumstances. Though I guess we're all just happy to be able to watch the draft.
Very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for obvious reasons. Being a Rangers fan, I get to see the man who has been touted as the number 1 overall pick this year for the past 3 years get to don the red, white, and blue. But a lot of other teams are going to be looking to add their next superstars, and there's a lot of really interesting players in this upcoming draft. Alex, who are your favorites for this draft?
So, first off, let me just start off by saying, in the past couple of years, we've seen the whole rookie race, everything, like as we saw last year, we saw the whole Capo Caco versus Jack Hughes, who's going to win the Rookie of the Year. Then
that went nowhere. That went nowhere.
Then we see Quinn Hughes come out of the woodwork and like, okay, this kid might win Rookie of the Year. And then everybody forgets defenseman Cale Makar, how good he is coming from UMass, and then he takes away the Rookie of the Year. I don't see this coming out of this draft. I do not see a rookie race. I think the number 1 pick in the draft is going to run away with the Rookie of the Year. Lafreniere is one of the most exciting prospects I've seen in a while. I mean, not counting out Connor McDavid. But I mean, Lafreniere, there's really no negatives about this kid. I mean, the only question is, does he have a 200-foot game? Does this kid play defense? He's being compared to Patrick Kane, and he has the softest mitts. This kid dishes the puck from one end to the other with greatest passes. Does he play a defensive game like Patrick Kane? That's the only drawback I see of this kid. But other steals, are we talking about steals right now?
Just give me your favorites right now. Give me your favorites of who you think is your favorite in this upcoming draft.
My favorite coming out of the draft right now, I'm going to get a lot of, bad stuff for this, but I am in love with this Jake Sanderson kid coming out of the United States National Development Program. I think this kid, now a lot of people are going to disagree with me because of Jamie Drysdale. I think Jake Sanderson is the best defenseman in the draft. This kid comes from a hockey-grown family. You have Derek Sanderson, who was on the big bad Boston Bruins. That's his grandfather, and then his dad, George Sanderson, played in the NHL. And then you see Jake Sanderson. This kid is just he was born to play hockey, captain on every single team he's played on, captain of the United States National Development Program. He played for Shattuck St. Mary's, which we know some of the best players in the league come from Shattuck St. Mary's. I mean, like Sidney Crosby. Ever heard of him?
No.
I mean, yeah, Shattuck St. Mary's. I mean, this kid's insane. He committed to University of North Dakota. So we'll see if they're going to see whoever drafts him. I can definitely see them doing the Quinn Hughes path with this kid. I'm going to throw him into University of North Dakota for a little bit, and then, out of nowhere, just bring him up to the league, and this kid's going to take over. But I think Jake Sanderson, whoever's going to take him, I think they're going to get a solid defenseman. Now, he might not put the puck in the net. He might not get as many assists, but this kid is, coming out of the draft, he's 6 foot, he's 6'1", 170. Coming into, this is a very small draft class. These kids are not that big. We see a couple kids that have some height and weight on them, but for the most part, Jake Sanderson is one of the biggest defensemen in the draft. So I think this kid's just going to give you a nice, solid defenseman all around. He's ranked right now as the number 9th pick in the draft, which I think is way too low for him. I think this kid could slip up and go into a top 5 draft pick. So, we'll see. It all depends on what Ottawa wants. I think if Ottawa drafts a forward right away, then I think Jake Sanderson is going to be their pick. Now, I could definitely see Jamie Drysdale going there, but I would think that Jake Sanderson is going to give you that more solid player.
Who's your favorite, Sean?
I really like Brendan Brinson. He's a guy that's committed to the University of Michigan, one of their highest recruits in the past couple of years. I actually have a buddy of mine who's the hockey broadcaster for the University of Michigan Wolverines, and he is absolutely excited and thrilled to get a chance to maybe call this kid, which means that he doesn't want him to get taken, because that means that he obviously might not go to Ann Arbor. But I really like all of the hype that he's told me about this guy. He's a good center out of Chicago, and it's just
he's a stud.
He apparently has like a lot of good facilitating ability. Not to mention he can put the puck in the back of the net. What my buddy Alex told me that he was really, not this Alex obviously, but the Alex at the University of Michigan, that told me is that he really likes to compare him to some of the younger centers that you see in the game now that really are kind of putting their mark in terms of their playmaking ability. I don't want to go and make the jump, but obviously as a Caps fan, like Evgeny Kuznetsov is a guy who really likes to move the puck around and really likes to facilitate as well. He's kind of somebody that I've asked him, like, is this somebody that you could see not making that level of play, but being a similar prototype player? And he said absolutely. He really likes to get points, and part of his game is the facilitating as well as the goal scoring, and he's got some soft mitts. So I really like Brinson going into the University of Michigan.
That kid is so dirty.
I like him too. I think he's going to stay at the University of Michigan for 1 year. I could see him going the 1 year route and then coming up. But Tristan, who do you think is your favorite coming out of this draft?
As someone from Ottawa, born not raised, but now going back to University of Ottawa for my schooling, I'm really looking forward to seeing how Jack Quinn does, local guy from the 67ers. He's being hailed as a really good kind of smart player on the offensive side of the puck, or side of the game. He can shoot, he can score, and he can also pass. So he's been doing really well on both of those aspects of just his offensive game. But he's also a guy who has a pretty decent 200-foot game as well. And he's honestly kind of reminding me of Nicholas Backstrom. I'm not saying he's going to, equal to that greatness, but he's definitely...
Cap center's going in this draft.
This is a completely unbiased podcast.
Completely unbiased.
Hey,
50% is Caps fans.
Hey, if these guys are getting a Nicholas Backstrom, who, let's be honest, is probably a Hall of Famer, or an Evgeny Kuznetsov, who is one of the top forwards in the NHL, they'll be pretty happy. So,
absolutely.
No doubt. If any of these teams get any of those types of players, there's no complaints from any of these teams for that. But I think for me, my favorite going into the draft, other clearly than Alexis Lafreniere, because, he will be a Ranger very soon, I absolutely love Jamie Drysdale. And I'm going to go against Alex here. I think Jamie Drysdale is
Absolutely.
the number one defenseman in this draft.
I just want to say
he's-
right now, I do not think one bit Jamie Drysdale's bad. I
He's-
think Jamie
oh,
Drysdale is a stud.
If you said he was bad, you'd be out your mind. But
No, Jamie Drysdale's a stud.
He is going to be a top pair somewhere in the NHL one day. He's going to be a top pair. The thing I like about him, he's only 5'11", but he plays a really, really, really tough brand of hockey. For being kind of undersized as a defenseman, he is not afraid to throw the body around. He can also be a bit of a power play quarterback. He has, I think, 30 or so assists so far in the
38.
38 assists so far.
It has 47 points in 49 games.
Yeah, the kid
Stud.
can put up points. The dude's can definitely pass. He's going to be a future power play quarterback. He's going to be a future top pair defenseman somewhere in the NHL. Whoever takes him, he's going to be a top 10. It wouldn't surprise me if he went top 5 even. So look out for that. But he's a guy that I just absolutely love. And personally, moving on to the next talking point, This is a big draft for the Senators and a couple other teams too that have multiple first round picks. The Senators, they have 2 picks in the top 5. What are y'all's top 5s kind of looking like? Give me a kind of an idea what the top 5 looks like for y'all. Alex, why don't you start?
I mean, do I even need to say number 1?
No.
I mean, come on. I mean, Alexis Lafreniere. First off, Tommy, do you think Lafreniere is going to be a franchise changer?
It's weird because the Rangers kind of already have their franchise changer with Artemi Panarin, but he's definitely a guy that could be the number 1 player on this team for years to come if, he develops the way the scouts are saying he's going to develop.
So here's the thing that I want to say about Lafreniere. When he produces, the team wins. So Lafreniere, over I think 4 or 5 years in the World Junior Classic, when he puts up a point per game, which he usually does, or more, the team's either in first or second place. When he doesn't show up, as it's only been 2 years that he doesn't show up to play, the team comes in fourth. So I'm just saying, when this kid puts the puck in the net, he helps the entire team out. Whether it's assists or goals, the team wins. So just based off of that right there, I think that kid is going to absolutely change whatever franchise he goes to. Now, we could see some weird trade, which I think that's at like a 1% chance of actually happening, but I think Alexis Lafreniere is going to be able to change the franchise of the Rangers. Number 2, though, with the Kings. Now, I've been going back and forth on this, but I finally came to my decision. I think the Kings are absolutely going to take Quentin Byfield at number 2. The Kings, if we know anything about the Kings, they love to pick these guys that are big and powerful. So, I mean, we look at some of their past draft picks. Dustin Brown plays that power forward type of game, but he puts the puck in the net. You got Anze Kopitar. I mean, Anze Kopitar is what, 6'4"? I mean, he plays like an absolute madman. Drew Doughty, another one who's an absolute psychopath, but he's just amazing. So we see one thing, the Kings love these bigger guys. Quentin Byfield coming in at 6'4", 215, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest player in the draft. This kid is going to be a perfect fit onto this team. I think he might be able to be NHL ready and come into the team right away. I mean, I see him maybe being a third liner, maybe being a fourth liner. But I definitely think the Kings are going to go Byfield at number 2, just based off of how he plays and being a power forward. Number 3 would be absolutely Timothy Stützle. I mean, if any team, if the Senators would pass up on Timothy Stützle, I mean, you're going to have to fire the entire. Yeah, you're going to have to fire the entire front office. Timothy Stützle, I mean, he's only 160 right now. But, I mean, this kid knows how to put the puck in the net. He is an offensive magician. He only has 34 points in 41 games playing for Alder Mannheim. But when you look at that, how old is this kid? 18? He's 18 playing with professionals, European professionals, and he's almost at a point per game. So when you look at those numbers, I mean, look at the numbers when he's playing at the under 20 team. 55 points in 21 games. Now you
Kind of
tell me what
unfair.
kind of a player he is. Yeah, absolutely. This kid, like you said with Jamie Drysdale, this kid's only 5'11", 165, basically the same build as Jamie Drysdale, but Timothy Stutzel plays at like a 6'2" size. He knows where everybody is. He has great offensive mindedness, and I think this kid is going to be great on the centers. Great fit for him there. And then at number 4, after the number 3, I think he could go everywhere, but I definitely see the Red Wings taking a Lucas Raymond, or is it Lucas Raymond?
I think it's
I don't know.
Raymond.
It's something odd, I thought, but Lucas Raymond, another small guy at 5'10", 160 from Frölunda. Frölunda, I don't know what's going on with them, but they know how to breed these young guys. It seems like almost every young guy that comes from that team is a stud, as we see the Rasmus Dahlin coming from Frölunda as well. Really nothing crazy to say about Lucas Raymond. He plays pretty much the same style of hockey as Timothy Stutzel. He knows how to put the puck in the net, even when he's playing with these European professionals. And then at number 5, I mean, going against Tommy, I see the Senators going forward, and then defenseman. I mean, I already said my piece on him. I think the Senators are going to take Jake Sanderson.
I knew it. Jamie Drysdale. He's it.
You're getting to me now.
I know. All right, Tristan, would you make any changes to that?
I think I would. Just swapping out the 4 and 5, the 1, 2, and 3. Actually, yeah, the 1, 2, and 3. You got it perfectly. The Quinton Byfield just makes way more sense for the Kings right now, because just based off his size alone, he's more NHL ready, and I feel like that's what the Kings are kind of going for, because we all know the Senators have no chance in hell of being anywhere near good for the next few years.
Yeah.
So they're going to want to look for people who are still developing, but can be those game changers, just little down the roads. But with where are we going with this?
You're on number 5, I think.
Number 4.
Yes, number 4, Lucas Raymond. I don't know. I don't see them taking a right wing. I see them going with more like a Cole Perfetti with that, going with more just boost up that left wing. Like on right wing, they have Anthony Mantha, Philip Zadina, and then the bottom wingers. They have on left wing? Tyler Bertuzzi. That's it.
They have Robbie Fabry.
Yeah, nobody knows about him though.
Robbie Fabry, what are you talking about?
Who's he?
Goal scorer.
Who's that guy?
All right, Tristan, I'll come back to you with stats.
Okay.
Sean, who do you think? Sean, who do you think?
So I completely agree about 1 through 3. Again, Quinton Byfield makes a whole lot of sense. I think Stützle, again, once you get to 3, if he drops any farther, you're just nuts. But I really like the fact that you have a player that kind of fits the brand of hockey that the Kings play in Byfield, and again, that sort of gets to a point in every sport and every draft where you can't let a guy fall so far, even if doesn't fill a need. In terms of 4, I'm going to take a little bit of a gamble here. How about Alexander Holtz on the left wing?
I was going to put him there. I absolutely agree.
The kid's good.
Honestly, if we're looking at what the Red Wings need, I think we all agree that they need some forward help. They need some scorers, and I really like. I really like the fact. That's true. They kind of need a little bit of everything up there in Detroit, especially now that they lost Mike Green. But I'm sorry, I had to get that one in there. But I think Alexander Holtz really kind of would fit the bill for what they need, and if you're looking at what he might be, it's one of the best pure shooters in the draft, and I think some people are even ranking him ahead of Lafreniere. So I think if you want to get a scorer, why not get a guy who shoots the puck really well? And then on the back end, why not? Ottawa needs some D help. Let's get him Jake Sanderson. I'm going to be on the Alex train for this one, just because why not? I think it wouldn't shock me if it goes Sanderson and then Drysdale, because the Ducks need defensive help too. So regardless, it wouldn't shock me if those two players go 6 or 5-6 in either order.
You see, the only change I would make to Sean's would be the D. I think the Sens having the ability to take both Quentin Byfield, or pardon me, Tim Stutzel, and then taking the number one defenseman in the draft in Jamie Drysdale is just kind of an opportunity you can't pass up. Because right now, all I'm thinking about is what could possibly be the. Is Eric Brandstrom? Is that the guy that they traded for? I believe it is. Eric
Yes.
Brandstrom and Jamie Drysdale top line. That line with whoever else is on the first line for the forward group can put up a crazy amount of points. I think Alexander Holtz is going to be an incredible player. The fact that he's rated like 8 in some places. I know he's just out of the top 5. Like, he's out of the top 5. The fact that I haven't seen a conversation of him inside the top 5 is kind of crazy to me. I think he's got potential to be like maybe the second or third best player to come out of the draft when it's all said and done. I'm not saying clearly immediately because the top 3 is the top 3, but when it's all said and done,
I think he's number 1 because the Rangers always mess up a pick.
Yeah, you know what? If they mess up Lafreniere, I will find a hole and just cry until I finally kick the bucket. That'll be me. I won't eat. I won't drink. I'll even hold my breath. Like, I will just cry.
Okay, but let's honestly, and I apologize, I don't want to cut you off too much, but I really do think that we need to talk about the fact that the draft lottery was so insane.
Yes.
I think the fact that we're skipping that is insane because the fact, and again, I don't want to take too much from Tommy, but you jumped 9 spots, and so that's one thing that we can talk about. The other one that I just want to talk. Well, I'm just saying 9 spots is one thing. I kind of wanted to start off this topic in how the one thing that the NHL has done wrong this season, because like Alex said at the top of the show, they have been the only league to handle COVID properly, which I think we should all give them a round of applause for. But when you look at yes. But when you look at how they handled the draft, I think they did it the worst way possible. How in the heck is it even a possibility? Well, of course you do. Listen, just hear me out real quick. And it's just going to be one sentence. How do you allow the possibility to occur where an unnamed team has the first pick in the NHL draft? A team that is playing in the postseason gets the first pick in the draft. The Red Wings were so bad this year that there's tanking, and then there's what the Red Wings were. And I mean, it's criminal. And I understand maybe you don't want to reward tanking behavior. You don't want that to become a norm. However, the fact that them and the Kings did not get an opportunity, and the Sens did not get an opportunity.
I agree.
Okay, well that's true. But I'm just saying, all 3 of them didn't even get an opportunity to vie for the number 1 pick because of the fact that they didn't win that lottery, and then all the teams in the playoffs had a chance to then win. I mean, you're talking about teams that were playing for a Stanley Cup were competing for the number 1 pick in the NHL draft, and it ended up going to the Rangers, which, I mean, let's be honest, if we're all going to pick a team out of the teams that made it into that, elimination first round, the Rangers are up there in terms of teams that deserve it because, yes, they only jumped 9 spots. I mean, it could have been a lot worse.
Could have been the Leaves.
But exactly. If the Leaves got it, then I think,
it could have been the Pens.
It would have been, if it was the Pens or the Leaves, it would have been a Patrick Ewing situation where people are calling conspiracy. But I digress. I just think the fact I would love to hear everybody's thoughts that are not Rangers fans on just
I got this.
Well, even Rangers, even Tommy, I just want to hear your thoughts on how that was they all sat at a table and were like, okay, guys, let's think of the format of this. Should there even be the possibility that somebody who's not or is still playing gets the first overall pick? And they really looked at each other and went, yeah. And I just think that's ridiculous. Anybody else take the floor?
So here's what I'm saying with this whole thing. Completely biased as well. The Blackhawks going into the whole COVID lockdown, the Blackhawks were not going to make the playoffs before that. They were below 500. They were not going to make the playoffs. They were projected to be around pick 13, 12, or 11. And then you get this whole round-robin play-in, the round-robin and the play-in rounds. and somehow a miracle, came down from the heavens, and the Hawks beat McDavid and Draisaitl and company, and bada bing, bada boom, the Hawks are in the playoffs. Regarding that, I mean, that's awesome. They made the playoffs, but then get knocked out first round. So that not only is just an absolute, atrocity that I get to see the Blackhawks in the playoffs and then knocked out in the first round. It's an absolute tease to see. But also, not only did it do that, but it also gave the Hawks a crappier position in the draft. So if you do the draft normally and you do the playoffs normally, hey, here's your record. You have a winning record. You were going to make the playoffs before the lockdown. We're going to start the playoffs like this. That's how it should have been. That's how it should have been. You have a winning record. If you were going to make the playoffs before the lockdown, you're in the playoffs. The Hawks would have got a better draft position, and then we would have had a more how do I put this? We would have a more like even playing field when it came to the draft. You wouldn't have teams like the Winnipeg Jets getting picked 10. The Winnipeg Jets were awesome. The Winnipeg Jets had a great season.
They had Stanley Cup aspirations.
They had a very poor play-in series, and look where they got. They're ending up at pick 10. So with how they did this and how they arranged this, I think it really just gave it a very uneven playing ground. I mean, that's awesome. The Rangers got the first pick in the draft. That's awesome, but you got to give it to the Red Wings. I mean, they were during when the lockdown hit, no more NHL. The Red Wings were throwing a parade in the streets, going, "Finally, we know we're going to get Lafreniere." Plot twist, no, you're not. You're going to get Lucas Raymond, who's he's good. Yeah, he's good, but like you were going to get a franchise. You're going to get a franchise changer in Lafreniere. So I think this not only messed up teams that made the playoffs, but it also messed up teams that missed the playoffs. I think it could have been done completely different. Just as I said, if you were going to make the playoffs before everything shut down, then that's how the playoff tree was going to look. Just do it like that. I think the way they did it screwed up everything.
Tristan?
Go ahead, Tristan.
Or anybody else?
My only comment for this is that they should have done what the Premier Lacrosse League did with a playing tournament for the playing tournament for the #1 overall pick. Face off against, the Kings, the Senators, the Red Wings, and the Ducks. Whoever wins between those
whoever
four,
loses.
they get
whoever wins.
No, I know how it went. I'm saying whoever loses, it's tanking to the extreme. They're scoring in their own net.
But that's the thing. That's why they implemented that secondary tournament for not just they had the 2 tournaments last year. The one tournament for obviously the winner of the league, then the next tournament for whoever got the #1 overall pick. And you know what that does? That prevents like clear and unbiased tanking, which I'm honestly a big fan of. And seeing the Rangers get the #1 pick, while honestly it's kind of cool seeing such a historic franchise kind of get a little boost back up. I want to see the little guys kind of get, some type of big win here instead.
I was rooting for the Wild so hard.
Exactly. The Wild haven't had, anything.
They haven't had anything.
The Rangers at least have a few Stanley Cup wins under their belt.
They have Capo Caco.
And they have Capo Caco and Panarin, Rip Lundqvist, but, they're looking okay. That's my 2 cents.
The thing that I have about it is, I mean, as a Rangers fan, I'm ecstatic that we have the #1 pick. However, I can't say Sean or Alex or freaking any of you guys are
He
wrong.
just said, "Fuck all you."
Yeah.
For the win.
Exactly. But I tried to hold my tongue so much this entire time and I slipped. But I completely agree with you. I think it was done wrong. I mean, the Rangers had, I think, a higher chance getting the first overall pick, doing it the way they did, than if they were to do just the regular lottery as if there was no corona. And I mean, it's weird because they had to create something. I think the top, or the bottom, I should say, the bottom worst 4 teams should have probably had a play-in to see who gets the #1 pick. But the thing is, all these teams, I think the problems kind of started off in the qualifying rounds.
Absolutely.
I think too many
I
teams
did not
qualified
like that.
in the
Well, so yeah,
qualifying round.
that's the
I
problem
think
in the
way
first
too
place.
many. Like you have to protect
If
the
the
teams
Blackhawks are
that
a perfect example.
you have to protect the teams that weren't going to make the playoffs
That's
to
what I'm
begin
saying.
with, like
Yeah.
the Rangers, like the Blackhawks, like like the Preds, like they wouldn't have made the play. At least I think the Preds wouldn't have made the playoffs, but they wouldn't have made the playoffs. They without COVID, they would have had a shot at the number one overall pick, and you have to recognize that. You have to give them a chance. The number one issue was the qualifying round. I think they should have shortened up the qualifying round to make it more competitive so that the teams that wouldn't have made the playoffs, like, definitely would have had the better chance at getting the pick. And I think it would have had less margin, like a less margin of error, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I agree.
Like having having the Leafs in that conversation for the number one overall pick was like kind of mind numbing to me, because I couldn't imagine Lafreniere playing with like Marner and Nylander
Matthews. Yeah.
among, like, others. It's kind of crazy. Like that was a possibility, and luckily they didn't get it. But
how about the Penguins, a team that had won 2 out of the last 4 Stanley Cups, was in the running for the number one overall pick, and they were, one of the top teams in their division.
they would have made the playoffs.
I just think, again, and like I actually kind of disagree with you in terms of the play-in, because the qualifying, and I only say it because of this: the fact that they lost a good chunk of the season is, I think, why they did it. Because look at the Blues.
Well,
right?
they didn't lose
The Blues
they didn't lose a good chunk of the season. They only lost like 5 games or 6 games.
Yeah.
That's fair. No, that's fair. I guess I thought I forgot that it was in like
it's
mid-March,
not-
and I thought
yeah,
it was
no,
like end of February. But no, that's true. But regardless, what I was going to say is the fact that like having all of the teams kind of did make it more fun, because you had the opportunity to have more teams play, and just this restart. I think the NHL just really kind of did it for, let's be honest, money and viewership reasons.
Yeah.
But I do think when you go into that territory, you should still have an avenue of protecting the teams that were going to be in line for that pick. And even if you expand the field, right? Like, even if you expand the field, make all of those expanded teams not have an opportunity to get the number one pick. I just feel like that is such a simple fix at the end of the day, because we don't have to make this complicated. It's the teams who, even with the expanded playoffs, the teams who did make the playoffs don't get a chance at the first lottery. The teams who didn't get a chance at the first lottery. It shouldn't be, hey, here's a team to be named later to get, like you all have been saying, and everybody's been saying, one of the best prospects the NHL has seen in the last 10 years. I just think it's insane, the fact that was even a remote possibility, and it ended up becoming reality. And luckily it ended up going to a team that somewhat deserved it. And I'm not going to say that the Rangers weren't bad and the Rangers didn't deserve an opportunity to get Lafreniere.
They're nothing like the Wild, though.
Well, that's true, but that's what I'm saying. At least they were a top 10 team. Because if you were looking at like the Penguins or the Leafs, it would have been an absolute travesty. And I still think it's upsetting the fact that you had teams that were still in the running, like the Wild, who didn't get robbed. But like Alex said, you have Los Angeles, you have Ottawa, you have Detroit especially, who think that they have this guy going for them for the next, they've been sitting around for months.
They were planning around this guy.
You're planning around this guy for months. These GMs and scouts, you don't look at just this draft. They've been looking at this draft 3 years ago. And so you're doing everything several years in advance, and I just think the fact that all of that gets thrown to waste because of just an error on the part of the National Hockey League is a complete disgrace. So hopefully this kind of situation doesn't happen again. I don't think we're counting on many more global pandemics to occur. Hopefully,
I don't think that's in the agenda. No.
But you know what?
I will keep
honestly,
my fingers crossed.
But honestly, though, let's honestly think about this, though. They've now gone through this, so they know, hey, this is what we did well, this is what we didn't. So should something, whether it be a pandemic, whether it be just a culture-changing event, whether it be God forbid something like a terrorism attack. 9/11 put sports on hold for a little bit. Whether it just be something that happens that causes the pause of sports, hopefully the NHL can look back and say, hey, remember what we did in 2020 for the draft? Let's not do that again.
But here's
Because
the
now
thing
you're
with
going to look
that.
at now you're going to see something that goes on with the Rangers to where they can be a playoff team like in the next 2 years, and they can be a consistent playoff team in the next 2 years.
But
if
here's the thing with
Lafreniere ends
that.
up carrying them.
The whole thing with that is when they see how this draft went and they see how the lottery went, they see as a losing team who before the whole lockdown happened had the chance of the first round pick. They see this as a success. Okay, cool. All these other teams had a chance and they didn't get it. The Rangers most deservedly had the best shot before and after to get Lafreniere, and they got him. So they don't. I don't think they will see this as an error. They're going to say, "Okay, cool, it worked out this time." So what's to say they won't do it again?
Well, you know what? That's true. You know what it'll really come down to? Who the heck do the Jets take? Who do the Penguins take? Because if these guys end up becoming absolute superstars and they had no business being on either of those rosters, that's when people are going to end up coming back to this 2020 draft and be like, "Hey, that shouldn't have happened."
It almost makes me feel like they should have gotten rid. They should have just gotten rid of the lottery in general. This is how it's going to be. This is how your season ends. This is how the draft is going to go, and this is who makes the playoffs. It almost makes me feel like that's how it should have gone. Take away the lottery for 1 year.
I
can agree with that. I agree
Take
with
your
that.
lumps. Take your lumps as it is. You finish the worst team in the league this year. You get the number one pick in the draft. It was an uneven playing ground for everybody because you had to close down the league, and maybe some of the teams who, if the league never even closed down in the first place, maybe they could have won the last 3-4 games of the year and made their way into the playoffs. Well, guess what? You didn't now, and now you got a shot in the lottery. So it almost makes me feel like the lottery should have just been thrown away, and just this is how it's going to be, and this is how it's going to go.
Yeah, this lottery has made quite a mockery of other lotteries, and I mean,
It's just
the
weird
biggest
to
thing
ask
for me
why.
is that there's a possibility that, like Sean said, with these possibility of these guys becoming superstars, of the teams that aren't good right now being good for even a longer amount of time, because the teams that are good that get these good picks could stay good if these kids that they draft turn out to be really good. And I think with that, we're kind of gonna wrap it up here. Does anybody here have any closing, final remarks before we log off? Sean, I'll start with you. Any closing remarks?
I'm really excited for Peter Laviolette. I know we didn't really get into the coaching changes and stuff like that happened around the NHL, but I'm excited to see, as a Caps fan, what he gets a chance to do in kind of his latest stint in the NHL, and thank God it wasn't Mike Babcock.
That's for
We
sure.
can all agree with that, Caps fans or not.
Alex, any closing remarks?
Not really. Just basically going to say that I'm insanely excited for this draft. I think this is one of the drafts that we haven't seen in a while where you really can't predict who's going to go where, except for the number one pick in the draft. Yeah, we did get our top 5 in there, but again, I think these picks could be all over the board. We could see some trade ups. You could see some trade downs. Who knows? But I definitely think that there could be some random throw-ins throughout the entire first round. It's going to be very interesting to see who goes where.
I agree. Tristan, last thoughts?
I'll keep it simple. Just congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning. They got everything they deserved. As a big UVA fan myself, they pulled off that perfect hero to zero to champion story, and it was pretty awesome to see. And
You see they used that as motivation?
In any better way. Yeah, no, I did.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and we're going to have a lot to talk about with the upcoming draft on Tuesday. For all those listening, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
We're going to try and get one up once every week or 2 weeks or something like that. We're definitely going to have one talking about the draft on the 6th of October coming up after the draft, whether it's right after the draft or a day or two after the draft. We will definitely be covering the draft. But thank you all for listening, and that will conclude episode 1 of From the Point.